Hey, what is going on? Frank Kritzman, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about when it's time to buy that first rental property and just some different things to consider when you're looking at rates of return and what I think are some pretty good metrics to follow when you're actually analyzing which property you want to buy and how to do that. Now, first off, I want to talk about getting rentals with the VA loans. And I know what you're thinking. No, you can't get a rental with a VA loan. Your VA loan has to be used to buy your primary residence. After a year, you can use that VA loan again and buy a different house, and then you can take that old house that you're in and use that as the rental. So the question is, when is that a good time? You kind of have to think about things a little bit in the opposite way where you would if you were going to use a conventional loan. So if you're going to use that VA loan, you want to look at your current house right now, what's the mortgage on that loan, and what's a fair market rent that you could get for that house. A good rule of thumb to use is the $500 rule. The $500 rule it's more of a guideline than an actual rule, but really it's just asking the question, is that estimated rent at least $500 more than that monthly payment? Having that minimum $500 of net cash flow should be more than enough to cover any sort of expenses that come up. You just have to make sure you're putting that money into some kind of account and not messing with it. Remember, that money is there for a rainy day just in case something breaks. So that's step one, is making sure that your current house can pass that $500 rule. Then the second thing you want to look at is, if you were to buy a new house that you actually wanted to live in, will that BAH in your area that you're in right now cover that new mortgage that you want to get? If you can just do a lateral move into another house using that VA loan, your VA loan still covers the mortgage, and you can also have this second property on the side that has that $500 cash flow, then you are good to go. Definitely time to start thinking about buying that rental property. See, using the VA loan, you're not really buying rental properties, you're just buying primary residences that you are going to later turn into a rental property. So one of the things that I'm looking at when I'm trying to decide what might be a good rental is I'm trying to obviously target good renters and have a nice renter pool. So what I like to do is look up the E7 BAH for whatever area that you're thinking about buying in, and then finding a target property where the estimated rent is equal to that E7 BAH. That way you know you're probably working with a pretty decent pool of renters. So just a quick little recap on VA. If you can rent out your current house for at least $500 more than your mortgage, and you can afford to get a new place with another VA loan, then that's when I would say, boom, it's time to pull the trigger and get your first rental property. The other option you could go is conventional, and there are a lot of reasons that you might pick a conventional loan over a VA loan. For example, unless you're a disabled veteran, that VA loan does carry a pretty hefty funding fee. So once you purchase that home, you actually get another 2 to 3% tacked on to the principal, and that is the funding fee. So that's the trade-off for not having to use any money down when you go to use the VA loan. So if you want to avoid that and go conventional, here's another couple things you want to look at. If you live around a lot of military like me, you can still use that E7 rule that I was talking about, just targeting properties where that estimated rent is right about the E7 BAH level, and just making sure it's in a good driving distance to the base. When you're trying to decide if this rental property is going to be a good investment, there's a couple different ways you could look at it. You could look at it using the $500 rule, you could do a cash on cash return, or you could look at the total capitalization rate for the property. Using the $500 rule, you would just find that target property that you want and then work with the lender and see how much money you would have to put down so that your rent is $500 more than your monthly mortgage payment. Once you figure out what that amount is that you have to put down, because there's a good chance you'll have to put at least 15% down and probably 20% down on a rental property using a conventional loan. So what you want to do is take that $500 a month net that you'd be getting after you pay your mortgage, multiplying that by 12. That's your annual cash return on the net. So that's $6,000. So you take that $6,000 figure and you divide that by the total amount that you would have to put down on that conventional loan, and that will give you your cash over cash return. I just ran a quick one on my spreadsheet real quick. If it takes about a $300,000 sales price to get our target E7 rent, and it takes about $60,000 down so that our monthly mortgage payment is $500 less than our estimated rent, that would yield a 10% return on our cash invested, which is pretty solid investment. The other way you could look at it, which is the capitalization rate or cap rate, usually used when you're just buying a property cash. You take the total monthly rent, multiply that by 12, and then divide that by the purchase price of the property. That will give you your total capitalization rate. And so investors are usually looking for around 8% when they're doing that. So those are just some good rules of thumb to go by. Ultimately, it just comes down to you. Is the money worth the headache? I hope that was helpful, and hopefully it gave you some things to think about. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them down in the comments. And if the video was helpful for you, make sure you press thumbs up. Have a great day.